Hello, my name is Lennox Nuttall. I will be discussing the results from our 2026 Colorado State University Hackathon that me and my team work towards. This is not really important. We'll just get straight into the JSON file that we outputted. Um, Firstly, I would like to kind of break down this information for you as someone who may not have a lot of knowledge in this area of crop yield and geospatial data, but more specifically within the realms of this Colorado State University Hackathon. We have five different states that we're comparing here. We have Colorado for one, we have Iowa for two, we have Wisconsin, Nebraska, and finally we also have Missouri. Another thing that I would like to mention is these 4 points of measurement here. We have August 1st, that is when the crop is initially planted. September 1st, that's when, it's beginning to sprout a little bit later into the season, but not midpoint yet. The maturity is more midpoint. We're able to see just how much these crops are flourishing, and especially in their peak maturity rate. And then finally, we have final post harvest, and this is when the crop is harvested, and we get a final yield of how the crop did that season. And this is consistent amongst all states. There's four constant points of measurement. However, you will notice that the numbers are different, and we'll get into that later. As of now, I want to talk about, as the season progresses, where are we pulling this data from? First of all, the data that is being pulled is putting into a AI model, an AI model called Prithvi, and that is being sourced from Amazon Web Services. Um, we use that model and then we train that model using the data from the following. Initially, HLS data, which stands for Harmonized Landsat Sentinel 2. Weird name. Essentially, that just means satellite images pointing down at the crop. And then, secondly, we have the NDVI health analysis data, which that stands for the Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. Here we're able to inspect and analyze the health of the crop yield. Third, we have the cloud and weather patterns. So oftentimes when it comes to satellite imagery, we have these cloud patterns, these waves of clouds that come and unfortunately block the view of the satellite. So it interferes with the data and we have to recognize that and then clean that data out from the entire pool that we're using. Because how useful can data be if it's being blocked by a cloud? We're not able to see anything, and we don't want to poison or what's the term I'm looking for? I guess just scuff up the data. We want to keep it clean, so we have to filter that out, identify it, filter it out. We also are looking for the agronomic nitrogen levels within the soils. As you know, as many people know at least, um, nitrogen is a direct implication of how strong and healthy a crop will grow. So, if there's more nitrogen in the soil, the crop will grow higher, stronger, more fruitful. If there's less, and also this varies from state to state. Not every state has the same amount of nutrients or nitrogen in the soil. So that's something we look at. And that was actually a unique angle of attack that we provided within our competition. Nobody else brought that up, and that was something that one of my teammates came up with. Um, Very grateful for that. Another thing was the USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture. They have a historical data set which allows us to compare our data to previous years. So thankfully, we're able to compare our data from 2025 and 2024 and so on, and that allowed us to be more accurate within our model. Um, yeah, I think let's just get straight into it now. So here, one thing you'll notice is that in the beginning, August 1st, for every state, it's pretty consistent amongst all. The numbers are different, but the results are the same essentially. Um, so in the beginning, the bushels per acre, which is essentially how much crop per acre there is, the yield estimate is really low. Not really low, relatively low is the word I'm looking for. It's relatively low compared to the final post harvest, right? You can see that for the post harvest, it's always going to increase. So we have 116 at the beginning, and then for the cones of uncertainty, this is essentially a confidence interval, a plus or minus, if you will. So right now we have roughly 14 plus or minus. The AI model is expecting that it could either be 14 below our estimate or 14 higher. And as the season goes on, we notice that the estimate is increasing as well as the confidence interval is shrinking. So, what does this mean? We get to the end here and we realize that, okay, well, we were expecting 116 in the beginning, but now we have an expecting, or not an expecting, but we have a final yield harvest of 128.6 bushels per acre. But look at the cone of uncertainty. It started at 14 plus or minus, but now we have roughly 5 plus or minus. What does this mean? This means that our model is becoming less uncertain, it's becoming more accurate, and overall, it is a more confident model due to the amount of information that is being pulled into it as the season progresses. So, the more information that we pull in, the more accurate that the model is able to be, and there's the less uncertainty. That was the big part of this is being able to diminish the amount of uncertainty within the model, and that's exactly what happened here. And you'll see this amongst the other states as well. For Iowa, for example, we have an initial estimate at the very beginning of the season of 166 bushels per acre, with a cone of uncertainty with roughly about 20, honestly, which is more than Colorado. And if we look at the end, obviously it's increasing over time, 175, 180, and we end at 184. So our final estimate is about 18 bushels per acre higher than the initial estimate. However, the cone of uncertainty is only 8 plus or minus instead of the 18, which is huge. It just goes to show how confident the AI model is becoming over time with more information. And I'm not gonna go state by state, but I'll quickly scroll through if you want to see 165 to 183. Um, Smaller confidence interval again, about 7 there. Wisconsin 157 to 174. Again, smaller interval. Missouri, same thing here. Um, and the final thing that I would like to output here is a huge part of our mission was the nitrogen levels in the soil. And if you notice, all of the states in the Midwest region, these are the states that output the most crop yield within the United States, and we'll see that right now. We have places like Missouri, which is really not that great, but Wisconsin, pretty decent. Nebraska, again, huge for crop yield, uh, but especially Iowa. Iowa's pretty big for crop yield, and one thing they have in common is that these places have a lot more nitrogen in their soil, a lot more nutrients in their soil, a better climate for growing than places like Colorado. Colorado is the worst one here. Why is that? That's because of how dry it is here, how much less nutrients we have in our soil, especially when it comes to nitrogen. Um, that was something that we presented to the judges, and they really appreciated that point of view because that wasn't something that was in the prompt. That was something that we came up with on our own, and just really thankful for that. Um, but yeah, that's our AI model. That's the results that we outputted and presented to the panel. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm gonna conclude that here. Have a good day. Thank you.